Well, here we are. It's Friday, January 30th, and this is, of course, the weekly video. We're going to take a look at some auctions that took place this week. Not a lot of new auctions have popped up. There's a few auctions I want to remind you that they're coming up, but there were several good sales around the 28th, the 29th, and today, and so forth. And then we're going to go through some results of those sales and talk about everything that's going on in the market. But before I get into it, there's something that's been on my mind, and I really want to share it with you folks because every year, my wife and I over the years have helped a number of organizations as much as we can that we feel really do good work. This is not political. This is to help people that need help, charity giving and so forth, where your money really has an impact. And that's one of the things I look for, places that really are doing something in big ways, maybe with small groups of people. And there's an organization that operates in Burma, also known as Myanmar, but they call it Burma now. It's an organization called Stronghold Rescue. And this organization was started by former U.S. Special Forces guys who went into Burma. They are not militants. They're not fighting. They're not, this isn't shootout operations. This is human rescues. And they deal with the people of Burma who are caught in the crossfire of the violence and revolutions going on there, and in particular with the Karen culture. And it's not the pejorative term that we think of in the West as Karens. That's their real names, or Kayan is also how they're referred to. And they live in rural areas along these rivers and so forth, and they are constantly being injured. They're constantly being attacked. Many have fled. They survive as best as they can. And this group went in, and it's a small group. It started as a very small group, a handful of guys, and they do this to help the people. And they don't get any federal money. They don't get any UN money that I'm aware of. It's all privately funded. And they go in. They have built roads. They bring in boats, and it's mostly rescuing people to get them to medical care. This is their big thing, is getting the people out of there that have been wounded, pregnant women that have been shot, pregnant women that have been, kidnapped and abused, children that have been injured with hand grenades. All kinds of horrific things happen in this area that we in the West just can't imagine. And these guys go in there, and they are a brave bunch. A number of them were very involved with defeating ISIS and these groups in the Middle East. They are very, very tough guys, very brave guys. And they go in there, they brought in ambulances, they brought in boats, and they go up and down these rivers and they rescue people out of these areas. And while they're doing it, they teach the people in the area medical procedures. They teach them how to maintain equipment and boats, do repairs on the infrastructure needed to save people, to get them out of there. And this is not a matter of just bringing some of these people, 20 minutes away by boat to a facility. It's hours and hours of arduous travel over rough terrain to get them to safety, to save them. And they have saved thousands of people. Thousands, and they do it all with private donations, and it's called Stronghold Rescue. I'm going to put a link at the bottom here. If you want to help them out, you can contribute a little bit each month. That's what we've always donated monthly. We've always been monthly donors, and over the years, we've probably I've given them thousands and thousands of dollars. That's fine. So I consider it money well spent, and I watch what they're up to each month, what they've been doing, their latest projects and so forth, and it's quite fascinating. And I'm hoping you'll be patient with this for a minute. This is a 3 or so minute video explaining what they do. It's very well done, and it talks about some of the basic stuff they do to work with the people, but it's all in the effort of saving lives. Truly saving lives, saving people who would never get to medical services and would certainly have died were it not for these wonderful people. And the local population come in and work with them, and they're taught skills, and it's a win-win all the way around. And I hope you find it interesting and perhaps worthwhile. All right, here we go.
My name is Wanli, and my position is...
Just so you know, they blur the faces because the government there, the militants, would love to kill these guys. This is real serious stuff.
Stronghold is operations manager for the field. I've been working for Stronghold for approximately 4 years. And so we have ambulances throughout Burma. I'd be sure all those are running yearly maintenance on them, checking with the guys, training, and working with them in the field. So every year we pull out the boat and do basic maintenance to the boat, the ambulance boat. It gets all rusty and gets banged up going through the shallow waters and the trees in the lake. Yeah, so they're refurbishing the boat right now. They're grinding all the rust and they're welding all the broken parts on it and preparing for this upcoming fighting season. The freedom we have here to do good and help out the Karen people and other people around the world is, I've worked nowhere else like this where we make a big difference and a big impact on a whole culture of people. One of the things I really like about Stronghold is we're charity with dignity. So we're letting the locals do the work. We end up doing a little bit of work and giving them the skills to accomplish the missions and the jobs. If it's a ambulance is working in the communities and transporting people back to hospitals, or if it's frontline CCPs, we're giving them the abilities so they can go out there on their own and do first aid at a high level. Man, the Karen people are the nicest people I've ever met in the world. They're super hard workers. They really care about their fellow people, and they also really care about Stronghold and the operation and what we're doing here. Man, the people I work with around the world and the differences of the lives we make with people who have nothing is something I've never seen another organization do. And I've worked for numerous organizations, from government organizations to other NGOs, and I've just never seen an organization that helps out so much. One of the things I'm very thankful for, I wake up in the morning wherever I'm at around the world. If I'm in a trench in Burma or I'm in Africa working with the Africa people, I always amazed at the donors and how much help that we're giving to people. So I want to say thank you to the donors for helping Stronghold. You're helping out so much around the world. And here in Burma, you're making a gigantic difference in so many people's lives. It's, I wake up every day amazed at the difference the donors are making. Thank you so much.
All right, so that's
Sheriff's
it.
office.
That's the it's on YouTube, so I got to get this out of the way here. Hold on a second. So that's the organization, and I didn't mention that they also do things in other parts of the world. They have a small group in Africa that works and does things, but they're principally involved in what's going on in Burma. And as they mentioned, they do also do border rescues. They send people in to get people that have been wounded, fighting off the rebels from their area. And they rescue those basically, they rescue the combatants, the village people that are fighting. These aren't really soldiers, many of them. They're just local people that can get their hands on a gun and try to keep their areas safe. And they get injured as well. They get shot and wounded. But it's primarily for the population. That's what they do. And anyway, I'm not going to go on about it too much. There's a link below if you want to look into it further. But personally, I think it's a wonderful organization, and that's all I have to say on it. All right. So now on to the regular things that we talk about each week. There were a number of sales that finished this week, and a lot of them did very well. The market looks incredibly strong right now, the antiques and art market, across the board, and we're seeing some real interesting results again, yet again this week in the American decorative arts field. And it's interesting, the folk art field also seems to be getting some real traction, as we saw with the sale at New England Auction Galleries a couple of weeks ago that Fred Giampetro ran. American folk art did extremely well. Stair Gallery had a sale this week with some things that are traditionally tied to American folk art and the Americana movement that also did extremely well. And we'll get to those in a minute. But first, I want to talk about the Rockefeller plates here that were, these were down at Doyle Galleries in New York. They sold a couple of days ago. And as always, they did very well. They were estimated, as we previewed these a few weeks ago, they were estimated just $1,500 to $2,500, which I thought certainly was doable and would probably do better. They did, of course, not because I said so, just because they always do well. And these were very nice dishes. They were in beautiful condition, and they went for $37.50 plus the premium, or around $4,500 for the pair. But these were rather nice. They were actually they didn't look too much like so much as bowls to me, but shallow plates, or I mean plates to me, but shallow bowls. But any rate, they were very, very nice, and they did fine. They did very well. All right. And the other thing was this wonderful lamp. I don't like the way they do them. This was down in New Orleans Auction Gallery. I don't like the way they do their photos because they don't show details of the vase. They may not have thought this vase was anything worth spending too much time on, so they just took pictures of the table lamp. This is a heck of a nice table lamp. That's a very expensive lampshade. I know, I can tell by the piping on it. And this was a nice late 18th or early 19th century Celadon with underglazed blue slip decorated vase turned into a lamp. This was a beautiful type. It was one of my favorites. And it ended up going, I think, pretty reasonably. With the buyer's premium, it came in at around $1,200. It's a wonderful, wonderful lamp. It had about a $500 shade on it, $600 shade. If you've ever had a custom lampshade, you know what I mean. Custom lampshades are very expensive. They always have been. But this was a very, very nice example. And then hopping over here, this was Material Culture. They had their rug and carpet sale. And this was that Salor Turkmen Chawal, as they were known, their saddlebag fronts that were woven by the Turkmen people, commonly known in the generic term as Bukhara, which is sort of a it's not really an appropriate name, but it's a tribal group that lived in Central Asia, Afghanistan, and North, that were primarily sheep herders and raised livestock, and they would migrate around with their herds and so forth. But they had an incredible weaving tradition, and this came from the most prominent of all the Turkoman tribes, the Salors. And this one, as you can see, it's got a hole in it. It's got damage on the edges. It's got wear. It's got a split up the middle, and it's still sold for around $9,000, including the buyer's premium. In perfect condition, this would have sold for $30,000 or $40,000. It was a really, we've seen them in the past, but this was a lovely example, and it was very old, made around 1800 to possibly the 1780s, a very early one. Exceptional work. When this was new, it must have been absolutely glowed, but it's a worthwhile object just the same. And then also at Stair Gallery, they had this. That was that Ming style ewer. Or florally decorated ewer with the twist spout and twist handles, and I think this was actually a very good buy, even though it went for about $3,000. It had a very low estimate. The estimate was only $600 to $800, which was artificially, I think, very, very low. But it did very well at the end. But it could have gone for more. This could have in other sales in the right circumstance could have brought maybe a little bit more money even. I'm not saying that the Stair doesn't do a great job with them, but I wasn't surprised that it brought almost $3,000. I thought it could have brought maybe $5,000 in my head, but there it is. It did very, very well. And they also had this. Now, this is the lot that had the wonderful Kangxi plate in it. It brought $3,750. We previewed it a week or so ago because I thought it was a very attractive lot. You have this very nice, well-known type of Kangxi plate, one of the higher-end models with the sort of swirl lappets going around the outside with the phoenix in the middle. And then it had with it this Batavia slip-decorated cup and saucer set, which I thought was wonderful. This was also very nice. This was bought from Bob McPherson in London years ago. He handles great things. If you're ever looking for something really good, check his website out. He's got some great stuff. At any rate, he's a top dealer. But this was in it as well, and this came from Jeffrey Waters, who was also a well-known London dealer. But beautifully done Batavia ware, wonderful quality, and it got a lot of attention apparently. It had 67 bidders watching it, and it ended up going for about $4,500 for all three pieces. Just exceptional. And then over to this, the big Wanli crack bowl. Now, last week we talked about these because this was a 14 3/4 inch example. Last week, or a week or so ago, when we were talking about this sale, I mentioned that 95% of these bowls that come out of the market of this size, these big Wanli bowls, always have cracks on them, it seems. They're always cracked. They always got hair. Not all of them have them, but the vast majority of them, the vast majority of the time, have hairline cracks in the bodies because of the shape and how they're made. They're just very prone to cracking. This one apparently didn't have any. And it had no repairs, which was also unusual on these big crack bowls because they've been around since the early 17th century. They're old. And this one was in wonderful condition, and I thought it would bring maybe 4 or 5 or 6,000. Well, the crowd got very excited about getting an uncracked, undamaged Wanli bowl, and it ended up going for 9 plus the premium, or roughly 11 or so $1,000. It did extremely, or 11,500 really. It did extremely well. Because finding one that's undamaged, absolutely uncracked, with no cracks in it. Normally with cracks, they bring somewhere between 1,500, 1,800, and 2,500. That's sort of the range, or 3,000. That's sort of the range they float back and forth in when they come to auction. And they turn up fairly regularly. You also see them in old Dutch paintings all the time, with fruit coming out of them and so forth. But this was a lovely example, and it did very, very well, which is interesting. And then this was also at Stair, was that nice Blanc de Chine incenser, 18th century one, maybe a little before. Ended up going for 1,800 plus the premium, or around $2,600. The Stair Gallery did very well this week. They had a great couple of sales. And then the Japanese dish in your lot. I thought this was a wonderful lot. Ended up at about $2,600 or so, $2,700 for these 5 pieces. But all of them are early. The plates were all 17th century or early 18th century, and then the ewer was 17th century as well. And Japanese things seem to be getting some interest because they're so good. The plate on the right I particularly liked because it had underglazed blue and it had underglazed red on the breast of the bird that appears to be underglazed, and that's very unusual. Very unusual. I was kind of wondering if it was enamel or not. I didn't hear from anybody that may have gone to preview the stuff, but looked awfully good. And then over here, the other stuff, when I mentioned before that the American market, because the American market is going to have a gigantic, the Western decorative furniture and American and antique furniture market is, I've said so many times, if that gets busy again, if you're a dealer, you're going to want to learn quickly about more about China trade if you haven't dealt with it in the past too much, because Chinese export porcelain is going to jump in value enormously if the American furniture market and the decorative art market in the West comes back, because it's always been part and parcel. It's all in the same boxcar, so to speak. And when the American furniture market collapsed 30 years ago, the China trade market went with it, and now that seems to be getting some life in it. And I'm going to go through some things that are sort of indicators of how strong the American market is coming back. There's a molded gilt sheet copper cast iron a ram Weathervane attributed to Fisk, which was a very famous workshop in New York. Went for about $13,000 with the buyer's premium, against a $4,000 to $8,000 estimate, which many people I think thought was pretty aggressive given how much these have been, how little they've been selling for in the past. 6 or 8 years ago, this ram probably wouldn't have brought, and this is a thing on a roof, if you can imagine. Weathervanes were very, very popular back in the 90s. This would have brought probably $3,000 or $4,000 around 2015, 2016. It wouldn't have brought much money. And they're starting to get interest. And you can always gauge the interest by the number of bidders that are watching an item. There were 62 bidders watching this, all right? And we'll get back to that in a second. There was this one also, the galloping horse cast zinc. Let's see here. This was also attributed to Jewett and Waltham, Mass. They were another Weathervane maker. I think they made the grasshopper on top of Faneuil Hall, actually. But anyway, this one was estimated just $2,000 to $4,000, had 68 people watching it, and it went for $13,500. He's jumping through a hoop, this Weathervane. Very, very lovely. All right. And the same thing. Let's see here. Actually, there were a number of them in the sale. I didn't pull them all up. But if you go and look, you'll see that they all did quite well. And the furniture is starting to do pretty well, too, even the fairly common forms. So watch for the highly decorative American furniture market, how it's doing, and the folk art market in particular, because that could be the gravitational pull for all of it. All right, and this was that Chinese export painting that we looked at last week. One of them, and it had some. It needed a cleaning. This painting is desperate in need of a cleaning. It's got sort of an umber tone to it, and that's just old varnish, old finish. And if this is cleaned properly by a really good painting restorer, the colors on this will just pop out of it. It'll be quite exciting. Actually, it'll be very, very. This looks like a view of Whampoa. In the back of it, they sort of smeared some gunk all over it. Anyways, went for 1,100 plus the premium, and once it's cleaned up, it'll look a heck of a lot different. All right, and then over to this. This was another one of these barometers of the American market. This was a painting by Mary B. Mellon, and you may not know who Mary B. Mellon was. She was a Cape Ann painter. This was painted here in Gloucester, up at a place called Norman's Woe, which is about 10 minutes from here. She painted with the very, very famous Gloucester artist Fitzhugh Lane, as he was originally known. And then somebody actually bothered to look up his birth certificate about 30 years ago and realized his middle name wasn't Hugh, it was Henry. And for 150 years, everybody called him Fitzhugh Lane. He was on all the books as Fitzhugh Lane. The guy that wrote the catalogue raisonné had him in as Fitzhugh Lane. And he was a real scholar on his work, but nobody ever really bothered to read carefully what his real name was. And they had to go back and they had to change all the plaques on all the paintings. But at any rate, Mary Mellon painted with him, and she was an extremely skilled painter. And the interest in her paintings fell off when the Americana market fell off. So they gave it a fairly good estimate. I didn't think the estimate, this was the thing that was interesting. I saw that estimate of 7,000 to 9,000. I said, well, it could go in that range. Well, apparently there's some interest in her work now. She was a wonderful woman artist. She was a wonderful artist, period, woman or man. Went for 24,000 plus the premium, or around $31,000 or $32,000 for this beautiful painting. This is a scene that many artists painted from when they came to Gloucester. A lot of famous painters came here over the years. Winslow Homer painted here. All kinds of great artists. And this was a lovely painting. At any rate, $32,000. And then this was that giant plate that was at Freeman's, as I recall, right? Freeman's, yeah. This was their one of their like Americana sale. It took place on the 28th. This was a wonderful, wonderful plate, and it was quite large. It was 16 3/4 inches in diameter, and it ended up going for about $2,300. And again, China trade, but really fine China trade. This was, if one of you bought this, I hope one of you did. This was a great piece of painted porcelain. Beautiful, beautiful cobalt decoration. So precise it almost looks like it almost had to have been done mechanically, and it wasn't. This is hand decoration. It's superb. And about $2,400 for that, which I don't think was outrageous. Now, there's some things coming up that I want to talk about. This is down at Leland Little, and this is one of these oddball relief work figural jars. You've seen them before. They were made in the 1890s to about 1910 or so. Sometimes they have enamels on them. Everybody that sees them for the first time go, what is that? That's such a strange thing. This is a type of porcelain they made that was done all in relief, and they applied clay onto the body, and they fired these. Sometimes they enameled them. Sometimes they didn't. I've always thought they were fun. I always thought they were sort of interesting and very tactile. I've held a number of them over the years. I sold a couple of them, actually, back around 2010. I got some out of an estate up here, and they're never terribly big. They're always somewhere in the 8 to 12 inch range. How big was this one? Yeah, 9 inches tall. There you go. And it's coming up at Leland Little on the 5th of February. And we're going to add that to the global pages this week. It's a curiosity, and it has the incise. One of the things that it had, like so many bases porcelains from this era had on the bottom, when you flip it over, you see these these crackle-ware pieces, and they have the same sort of incised sort of a chenoir mark into the bottom. And then they have these little spots on the bottom that look like pebbles. And sometimes they glaze some of it. Sometimes some areas on this is partially glazed. Sometimes it isn't. But it's an interesting type of pottery. There's not a lot written about them, or porcelain. They don't cover them much anywhere because they're sort of oddball. Some people think they're kind of ugly. I think they're fun. I think they're great. Anyway, that's coming up, and then this is coming up at Case Antiques. Oh yeah, Case's sale is coming up tomorrow. And if I know a lot of you have been following it, they've got some very nice Central Asian pieces in it. There's some Chinese things in it. This robe, we mentioned it a few weeks ago, is going to be up. It's a nice, cobalt blue with gilt thread, late Qing probably, possibly early Republic, but I think probably late Qing. Rather nice. It's got 6 bids so far. It's got 122 people watching it, and it's estimated at $800 to $1,000. Safe to say it's probably going to bring $3,000 to $5,000, but you never know. You never know. So if you like it, leave a bid on it. That's all I have to say. And the other thing that's coming up, this is also at Case, is this very nice Hariz carpet. If you like rugs and carpets, because I know a lot of you do, this is a good one. And the funny thing about this is that somebody emailed me and they wanted to know, because they said this photograph here, this is the primary photograph. They sort of screwed this up. And I looked at it, I said, oh, it looks like the outer borders have been cut off of it. And I didn't realize it was the one I'd already looked at. There's the outer border here. It hasn't been cut off, but for some reason, when they did the prime photo, they showed it with what looks to be a border cut off, because they ended the photograph right around here, and it's all there. There's the outer border and so forth. But this is a nice Hariz with good color. It's a 19th century one. It's got a good salmon color here in the middle, very decorative, and it's a good size. It's 9 by 12 feet, classic living room or dining room size. It's estimated at $1,200 to $1,400. It's got 135 people watching it. All right. And one of the reasons the Case has so many people watching their stuff is because they put their sales up very far in advance. This is the thing that a lot of auction houses, I've talked about this before, sales that have very short notices. When you check on Live Auctioneers and Valuable for sales that are coming along, always check most recently listed. And the reason is sometimes you'll catch a sale that's been just put up 3 or 4 days before the auction begins, and you get a shot at a good deal. With Case, it's a little tougher because they're professionals. They put their sales up 5-6 weeks before the sale, and you pick up a lot of watchers. And it just helps insulate the sale from disappointment. And but this is still a rug worth going after. It should bring $3,000 or $4,000. It's a wonderful rug. It's a beautiful rug, beautiful color. But if you look at Case and other auction houses and you see huge numbers of watchers like you see here, it just means in many cases, it means a couple of things. It means the item is very good, and it also means they probably put the sale up well in advance. If you can sign to any of these auction houses, always ask them how many weeks before the sales is going to be posted to Live Auctioneers. And if they say, oh, we do it 2 weeks or a week before, don't consign with them. Go to an auction house that is organized enough that they can get their stuff online, not on their website, because some auction houses do that. They put it on their website first for a couple of weeks, and then eventually they get around to Live Auctioneers. You want to know when they go on Live Auctioneers, and it should be as close as possible to a month out. At least some auction houses are on here 2 or 3 months in advance. I'll just say it. There are a couple of sales on right here now that don't come up until the end of April, the end of March and April. All right. The other thing that's coming up, this is on February 1st. This is a wonderful thing. They've got it listed as Chinese, as sort of a stupa, and this is at Topwells down in Hyde Park, New York. And it's ivory. I don't know how are they describing it as ivory? No, they're carving it as a reticulated bone Buddha. I don't think this is Chinese. I think this is probably from India. I think this is probably Anglo-Indian ivory. The carving on it just doesn't look Chinese to me, especially the base. That's my impression of it. I suspect it's for the Indian market, made in the Indian market. But it's a beautiful piece. It's about 9 inches tall. It's a pretty big chunk of ivory. It's reticulated. There is a Buddha figure behind here. They didn't do a very good job of getting his face out, but he's in there. You can see his nose and his eyes. This is a beautifully carved thing. It really, really is. And they didn't do enough detail shots because there's, I believe, another figure in the top here, and then there are figures all around the interior cylinder. This is a wonderful thing, and I think if you buy it, it'll be very. And also the top of it, that looks very Indian to me with the way the flowers are done, and so forth. The estimate is just $600 to $800, $200 starting price. The sale is on February 1st, a couple of days, and there's only 13 people watching it. All right, but it's pretty good size. As I said, I believe it was 9.5 inches tall. There it is. All right, so that's something worth thinking about. The other thing that's worth thinking about is this. Now, this is a piece of Japanese amari, obviously. but it's very big. This is a big charger. It's 20 inches in diameter, which is quite large. It's just a little bit smaller than that large one that's hanging right behind me here. And this is an early 18th century piece of Amari. This is not Meiji period. This is early 18th century. Wonderfully done, and it looks to be in very, very good condition. You want to get a condition report if you can, but I don't see any indications of any damage anywhere on here. The back of it, the foot, the way it's done, all looks perfectly good to me. Spur marks all over the place, of course. And the estimate is $3,000 to $5,000, which I think is a little aggressive, but I think the opening price is perfectly reasonable. And I wouldn't be surprised if it ended up going for $2,000, $2,500, maybe more. It's very large. And as we've seen in the last few weeks at Drew Eats, in the last few months actually, Drew Eats over in the UK seems to have done very well on several sales, not just one sale, because one sale doesn't mean anything. You want to see sort of consistent results. And I've noticed over in the UK, Japanese Amari seems to be catching a lot of attention. There were a number of big Amari jars from the 17th and early 18th century that they've had that have sold in pairs. A few years ago, they were going for $1,500, $2,000, $2,500, that sort. They weren't bringing any money to speak of like they were in the 90s. Now they're bringing $8,000, $9,000. There was a pair of them that brought $15,000 or $16,000 plus the premium. So I got a feeling that as we've been talking about now for a year or two, that there seems to be some renewed interest in Japanese porcelain, and for good reason. This is a superb piece of porcelain, and the Japanese workshops, and many people believe that a lot of the Japanese porcelain made, particularly during the Meiji period, when Chinese ceramics had slid so severely in quality in general. Some of the pieces were still quite good, of course, but in general, their general production had slid. A lot of the Meiji period stuff is superior to what was being produced in China at the same time, as far as quality and workmanship goes, and quality of the paste and the porcelain that was used. And I think maybe there's some recognition coming back to that. I think it's a ridiculously undervalued market. If you had a 20-inch Kangxi charger of this size with this proliferation of decoration on it in the Chinese style, 20 inches wide, it would be a $15,000 or $20,000 dish. All right, so the Japanese things seem to be getting some traction. Anyway, it's a nice piece, and this is coming up at Antiques. This is artantiques.com. Art Antiques is all one word. Coming up on the 8th of February. Art Antiques. And then this is also coming up. This is that wonderful Anglo-Indian table coming up at Case down in, is this tomorrow? Yes, this is tomorrow. Anglo-Indian table tomorrow. Beautifully done. This one has been beautifully kept. Incidentally, it's been oiled and given a lot of good attention over the years. It looks like it's in wonderful shape. 1850s to 1870s probably. Wonderful quality. It's estimated $1,000 to $1,200. Does have 51 bidders on it. Again, there seems to be interest in these things all of a sudden, and I'll be very curious to see how it does. It deserves to make 3,000 or more, but we'll see. We'll see, because shipping is a problem always. And then you have this sale coming up. This is at Oak Ridge. This is tomorrow, by the way. They had a sale the other day that had some things in it, but there's a couple of things in tomorrow's sale if you're following it. Because a couple of you I know are. There's a couple of Chinese export paintings in here, and this is one of them. These are tradesmen. The man on the right appears to be a doctor of some kind, and the one on the left is either a cobbler or he's filing something. I can't really tell from the picture. Hold on a second. What's he doing? He's making some sort of tool, it looks like, for her. And she's standing here and she's got a bronze mirror in her hand. That's the thing that caught my eye. She's holding a mirror, one of those round mirrors, the bronze mirrors there. At any rate, this is an interesting pic. This is a nice picture. It's very decorative. It's estimated at 1 to 200. It's got no bids yet. It's only 5 people watching it. I'm going to bet you can pick these two up for under $300. The other thing that's in the sale that's quite nice, if you like Japanese bronzes, is this vase. This is a large vase. It's 17 inches tall, and it's got sort of a gilt splash ground on it with relief work of an immortal and these very sinuous dragons around the top. But it's a big piece of bronze. It's 17 inches tall. It looks like I can't tell from the photo, the bottom of it. This was one of the things that's a common problem with these Japanese bronzes is the base plates get knocked out of them. And I was looking at that edge of the base plate, and now the base plate either has been replaced or it got jarred. The bottoms of Japanese vases were often done in these thin metal things fit into a slot around the bottom somehow, and they tend to fall out. And I've seen you see it much more often on Japanese bronzes from the Meiji period than you did from other eras, and I've never understood why. But you often find Japanese bronzes either with vases with no bottoms or they solder them back in. Some people, when they get them to the West, if the bottoms fall out, they'll actually put a bead of solder around to hold it in place or some sort of like Loctite or cement or C7 or some other compound to hold it there. But anyway, this is a really nice looking thing. It's a great bit of decoration, and it would make a spectacular table lamp because of its size. It's 17 inches tall. It's beautiful. All right, and then over to this was another pair of paintings that are also coming up at Oak Ridge. These wonderful bird paintings. Now, they say these are on rice paper. And I looked at these. Generally speaking, when people refer to the word rice paper, they mean pith, the pith papers, the pith paintings. That's what rice paper means in the West. When people would say, oh, it's done on rice paper, they mean pith paper. No paper was ever made out of rice. They didn't make paper out of rice. The pith comes out of the heart of the pith tree, and it's actually it's just the wood of the tree, the fibrous interior. And they slice it very thin like paper, and they dry it, press it flat, dry it, and paint on it. But I look at these. These look like regular English paper. These look like either Chinese paper or English paper, real paper. There's nothing here that looks like pith to me, because pith has a certain surface on it. I think these are watercolors on paper. If these are on pith, they're really rare. But I think they're on English paper, but they're beautifully done, very finely done. And I think they've got the dating wrong on these. I think that these are probably much more likely to be mid to first half of the 19th century. They have them down as late Qing, meaning 1900 to 1905, somewhere there. I don't think so. These look much older. They look like 80 or 100 years older than that. And the estimate is nothing, $100 to $200. There's only 6 people watching it. The sale is tomorrow. And these are nice size also. These the image size are 6 by 10s. And the overall dimension, including the frame, is 11 by 15. So they're nice size pictures. And they're wonderful, wonderful things. All right, so that's sort of all that's going on right now. I expect there'll be a new wave of auctions coming up in the next week because a bunch of them have just cleared out. And increasingly, we're focusing, when we talk about auctions, we're focusing on the auction companies that we really feel the most comfortable with, because a lot of them, as you know, are not terribly integrity isn't their first word of the day, so to speak. We'll put it that way. And the Eden Galleries and Lauren Galleries and these people, and other auction houses in between that fool around with dates and intentionally take photographs to deceive people. Always be very careful around online photographs because they can adjust colors. They can make things look very different than they look in person. All right, but there are certain auction houses that we like to cover because they don't do that, and that's why somebody said, "Why do you talk about stair galleries and this and Leland Little and these places?" Because they do a good job. That's all. The auction houses that do a really good job. You got Grogan in Boston. You've got Kasha up in Thomaston Place. Devin Moyes and Smiths. You've got who's in New York, Doyle, Freeman in Philadelphia, the Millet brothers. These are the Stair galleries. These are the good guys. There are others too. I'm not mentioning them. Aqaba in Florida has been doing better and better things. You just have to sort of follow them along and get to know them a little bit, and then those are the people we focus on. If we see something good somewhere else, we'll talk about those too. But source is very important, and the integrity of the auction house is very important. Just as an aside, as a reminder. All right, have a wonderful weekend. Stay warm out there. The Psych sale took place the other day. It did extremely well, and I was going to do it here, and then I realized it's such an interesting sale and so big. We're going to do a separate video on it. We'll probably do it on Monday, I think. I've got to go out and do some errands on Monday. I had a couple of house calls this week, but I want to do a separate video on the Psych sale because I thought the sale did very well. There were some sleepers in there that really took off, and it was a good auction. It was a fun auction, and it was an auction that anybody could have participated in. Basically, if you're a collector and you don't have an endless wallet to blow on things, it was a pretty good place to buy. All right, they had some nice things that were fairly priced. And they had some things that took off. So anyway, we'll get into that. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for watching. Subscribe here. Leave a comment. Join us over on Patreon. And on we go. All right. Bye-bye.